last glimpse of light, I discovered that my store of matches had run low. It had never occurred to me. Hey guys, also Sean's here. I got my time machine playing. My brother out there in the living room having a fit over wrestling. Wrestling got him going. Wrestling to have me going also. Okay, so I'm going to finish up on this Rihanna picture. Hopefully, I am more better. Is something? Is there something? Okay. I need to lock this up. But anyway, finish up on my Rihanna cartoon. I got two of them up here. Two Rihannas. I need to put a dot on her eyes. I don't know, do Rihanna have real eye color or not? I shouted at them as loudly as I could. They started away, and then I could feel them approaching me again. But I'm just gonna put it down anyway. I need to pull up her picture. I shivered violently and shouted again, rather discordantly. Pull up her picture so I can have reference. Seriously alarmed, and they made a weird laughing noise as they came back at me. I will confess, I was horribly frightened. I ain't gonna lie, like Rihanna's not very pretty. Very pretty. So this is a cartoon. I'm going to do a Rihanna. If I hit the camera now, then I'm sorry, my laptop is charging and the plug is pretty short and it's kind of in my way. Let's go and work on her skin complexion. So I think this time I'm just going to use yellow. You could scarce imagine how nauseatingly inhuman they looked. Those pale, cheerless faces and great, lidless, pinkish gray eyes as they stared in blindness and bewilderment. But I did not stay to look, I promise you. I retreated again. I just don't have much white left. That's my problem. Not a lot of white. It had almost burned through when I reached the opening into the shadow. Let's see. I laid down on the edge for the throb of the great because I think my stuff not gonna get here till Wednesday. Maybe I should take a break until Wednesday comes. My feet were grasped from behind, and I was violently tugged backward. I lit my last match. I probably mainly stop drawing till Wednesday comes. I hope it comes Wednesday because these mailmen, they've been really acting crazy about delivering. While they stayed peering and blinking up at me, all but one little wretch who followed me for some way and well nigh secured my boot. Just like this gold right here. This gold ain't there no gold here. The last 20 or 30 feet of it, a deadly nausea came upon me. I had the greatest difficulty in keeping my hold. The last few yards was a frightful struggle against this faintness. Several times my head swam, and I felt all the sensations of falling. At last, however, I got over the well mouth somehow and staggered out of the ruin into the blinding sunlight. I fell upon my face. Even the soil smelled sweet and clean. I'm trying to use my gold despite how much is a baby. But I'm put the white down first. Be careful not to sweep a smudge. End of chapter 6. Chapter 7. Now, indeed, I seemed in a worse case than before. Hitherto, except during my night's anguish at the loss of the time machine, I had felt a sustaining hope of ultimate escape. But that hope was staggered by these new discoveries. Hitherto, I had merely thought myself impeded by the childish simplicity of the little people, and by some unknown forces, which I had only to understand to try not to smudge. Don't do what I'm doing. The only reason I'm doing this is because I have Tourette's. And sometimes when I get to drawing, I have no control over how fast I'm going. Because I'm pretty jacked up with cut down to sickness. Well, not that jacked up. Thank the Lord I don't have the coronavirus. Okay, so I got that down. I'm shoving it too. Not now such a very difficult problem to guess what the coming of dark nights might mean. The moon was on the wane. Each night there was a longer, I'm gonna get this premier color yellow. That was the premier color white I had used it too. But now I'm gonna get the premier color yellow. And go over with it. I'm gonna try my best. Cause yesterday I really just wasn't feeling it. Yesterday about doing Rihanna. I think I was mostly just fatigued and tired, and I didn't have no vision. Like the Carolingian kings, had decayed to a mere beautiful futility. They still possessed the earth on sufferance, since the Morlocks, subterranean for innumerable generations, had come at last to find the daylit surface intolerable. And the Morlocks made their garments, I inferred, and maintained them in their habitual needs. Perhaps the survival of... And let me tell y'all something. Y'all need to watch the 1960 Time Machine and get the H.G. Wells book of the Time Machine. Read it, all your book. I'm telling you, you stay entertained. That book on. It's a great book. I'll never grow old with that. Ages ago, thousands of generations ago, man had thrust his brother man out of the ease and the sunshine. And now that brother was coming back changed. Already, the Eloi had begun to learn one old lesson. So I'm going to get this gold. Now I'm going to try to save as much gold I can because I still got to Wednesday or Thursday before my stuff comes in. I don't know, maybe I'll receive a miracle from him. Jesus is something. I did want to see how it would work with this orange if I just use this orange and replace the gold. I was differently constituted. I came out of this age of ours, this ripe prime of the human race, when fear does not paralyze and mystery has lost its terrors. I, at least, would defend myself. Without further delay, I determined to make myself... Because I'm going to have to use this brown anyway. With that refuge as base, I could face this strange world. Still come out the same, so I'm going to save my gold. I'm just going to use the premier color orange. I'm going to sharpen it. Going to use this premier color orange on Rihanna. I wandered during the afternoon along the valley of the Thames, but found nothing that commended itself to my mind as inaccessible. All the buildings and trees seemed easily practicable to such dexterous climbers as the Morlocks, to judge by their wells, must be. Then the tall pinnacles of the palace of green porcelain and the polished gleam of its walls came back to my memory. And in the evening, taking Lena like a child upon my shoulder, I went up the hills towards the southwest. The distance, I had reckoned, was 7 or 8 miles, but it must have been nearer 18. I had first seen the place on a moist afternoon, when distances are deceptively diminished. In addition, the heel of one of my shoes was loose, and a nail was working through the sole. They were comfortable old shoes I wore about indoors, so that I was late. And it was already long past sunset when I came in sight of the palace, silhouetted black against the pale yellow of the sky. Lena had been hugely delighted when I began to carry her, but after a while she desired me to let her down and ran along by the side of me, occasionally darting off on either hand to pick flowers to stick in my pockets. My pockets had always puzzled Lena, but at the last she had concluded that they were an eccentric kind of vase for floral decoration. At least she utilized them for that purpose. And that reminds me, in changing my jacket, I found... The time traveler paused, put
his hand into his pocket and silently placed 2 withered flowers, not unlike very large white mallows, upon the little table. Then he resumed his narrative. As the hush of the evening crept over the world, and we proceeded over the hill crest towards Willow, Lena grew tired and wanted to return to the house of gray stone. But I pointed out the distant pinnacles of the palace of green porcelain to her, and contrived to make her understand that we were seeking a refuge there from her fear. We felt that great pause that comes upon things before the dusk. Even the breeze stops in the trees. To me,
okay, so now I'm going to get this.
About that evening stillness. The sky was clear,
Yeah?
remote, and empty, save for a few horizontal bars
Yeah?
down in the sunset. Well, that night,
I'm drawing.
expectation took the color of my
Drawing?
eyes. In that darkling
I said I'm
my
drawing.
senses seemed preternaturally sharpened.
What do you say?
I fancied I could even feel the hollowness of the ground beneath my feet.
That was my dad.
Almost see through it the Morlocks on their
They can want
hands,
some attention.
going hither and thither and waiting for the dark. In my excitement,
Okay, so now I'm gonna use this
they would receive my invasion of
my
their
favorite
provinces of
toffee
declaration
brown.
of war. And why had they taken my time machine? So we went on in the quiet, and the twilight deepened into night. The clear blue of the distance faded, and one star after another came out. The ground grew dim, and the trees black.
To anybody that is watching this right now, y'all might want to check out Quincy Brown. Quincy Brown, I really am a fan of him. I love the music that he makes. I think he's fun. You know, I love his new song he got out. Quincy Brown, of course, who don't know, he's Puff Daddy. Puff Daddy called him his son, but his biological father is I'll Be Sure, and his mama is the late Kimberly Pora. Matter of fact, it was the anniversary of her death, I think a couple of days ago, and I don't know. I just think it's sad that she's, you know, when you love your parents, you do love your parents. And I think it's sad that she died so young, too. I mean, Kim, she was young. You know, she was very young. But he's a fun guy to watch on Instagram, to watch on TikTok, even on YouTube. I wish he'll upload like a vlog all the time. But you know, I know he's a busy guy too, and he can't vlog all the time. I'm on the little fan mail thing, and I got a birthday card. I know I'm not the only one. Birthday card from him on my birthday. That was pretty nice. I've been following him for like some years now. I've been following him ever since like let's see, when he first started trying to do music and movies and stuff, because I was big on Puff Daddy, and I was like, well, he's associated with Puff Daddy, then I'm a fan, but it went from he associated Puff Daddy to actually I'm just a fan. So, man, name of his own, about, you know, his mama or Puff Daddy. Slow, inevitable drift of their movements out of the unknown past into the unknown future. I thought of the great precessional cycle that the pole of the earth describes. Only 40 times had that silent revolution occurred during all
that I had traversed. And during these few revolutions, all the activity, all the traditions, the complex organizations, the nations, languages,
So I got that down, and I think I'm gonna get the white. I'm gonna go over it with the white on certain parts. On certain parts with the white.
Who had forgotten their high ancestry and the white things of which I went in terror. Then I thought of the great fear that was between the two species, and for the first time, with a sudden shiver, came the clear knowledge of what the meat I had seen might be. Yet it was too horrible. I looked at little Nina sleeping beside me, her face white and star-like under the stars, and forthwith dismissed the thought. Through that long night, I held my mind off the Morlocks as well as I could, and whiled away the time by trying to fancy I could find signs of the old constellations in the new confusion. The sky kept very clear, except for a hazy cloud or so. No doubt I dozed at times. Then, as my vigil wore
Okay,
on,
so
came a faintness in the eastward
there's
sky,
something else I forgot
like
to do
the
on this
reflection
picture
of some
too.
colorless fire, and the old
There.
moon rose, thin and peaked and white. And close behind, and overtaking it, and overflowing it, the dawn came, pale at first.
Okay, so I got the white down as on certain
No
parts,
Morlocks had
and now I
approached
want
us.
to.
Indeed, I had seen none upon the hill that night.
Let me
And
see.
in the confidence of renewed day, it almost seemed to me that my fear had been unreasonable. I stood up and found my foot with the loose heel swollen at the ankle and painful under the heel. So I sat down
I'm gonna
again,
put
took off my
this
shoes, and flung them away. I awakened Mina,
brown
and we
around
went
her
down to
eyes a
a wood,
little.
now green and pleasant, instead of black and forbidding. We found some fruit wherewith to break our fast. We soon met others of the dainty ones, laughing and dancing in the sunlight, as though there were no such thing in nature as the night. And then I thought once more of the meat I had seen. I felt assured now of what it was, and from the bottom of my heart I pitied this last
And I'm gonna take some gray and go on top of the gray.
Clearly, at some time in the long ago of human decay, the Morlocks' food had run short. Possibly they had lived on rats and such like vermin. Even now, man is far less discriminating and exclusive in his food than he was.
I'm gonna put the
Far
gray
less than any
underneath
monkey.
too.
His prejudice against human flesh is no deep-seated instinct. And so, these
And let me
sons
see,
of
what
men,
else do I want to do?
I tried to look at the thing in a scientific spirit. After all,
Some pink.
they were less human and more remote than our
Some pink.
cannibal ancestors of 3
I'm
or
gonna try
4,000
this one.
years ago.
Look at it. It says
And the
berry.
intelligence that would have made this state of things a torment had gone. Why should I trouble myself? These Eloi were mere fatted cattle, which the ant-like Morlocks preserved and preyed upon, probably saw to the breeding of. And there was Mina dancing at my side. Then I tried to preserve myself from the horror that was coming upon me by regarding it as a rigorous punishment of human selfishness. Man had been content to live in ease and delight upon the labors of his fellow man.
And I think I want to go over it again one time with this brown.
And in the fullness of time, necessity had come home to him. They even tried a Carlyle-like scorn of this.
So I'm gonna get this, where's that white?
But his attitude of mind
The
was impossible.
Crayola color white to help.
Degradation. The Eloi had kept too much of the human form not to claim my sympathy, and to make me perforce a sharer in their degradation and their fear. I had at that time very vague ideas as to the
I
course
like
I should pursue.
putting makeup
My
on
first
them.
was to secure
You
some
know,
safe place of
I
refuge,
love it.
and to make myself such arms of metal or stone
I'm
as I
using
could
the
draw.
white, the Crayola
That
white,
necessity was
to blend it out.
in the next place, I hoped to procure some means of fire, so that I should have the weapon of a torch at hand, for nothing I knew would be more efficient against these Morlocks. Then I wanted to arrange some contrivance to break open the towards the building, which my fancy had chosen as our dwelling. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8. I found the palace of green porcelain when we approached it about noon, deserted and falling into ruin. Only ragged vestiges of glass remained in its windows, and great sheets of the green facing had fallen away from the
So I'm gonna get this white again. Well, before I get the white, let me go and finish up on her neck before I
I was
forget.
surprised to see a large estuary, or even a creek, where I judged Wandsworth and Battersea must have once been. I thought then, though I never followed up the thought, of what might have happened, or might be happening, to the living
Okay,
things
so
of the sea.
now I'm gonna get the white
The material of
again,
the palace proved on examination to be indeed porcelain, and along
and
the
then
face of
go over
it,
the white
I
on
saw
certain
an
parts of her
inscription in
face,
some unknown
cause she
character.
looked like she had some white
I
powder
thought,
on her
rather
face.
foolishly, that Weena might help me to interpret this, but I only learned that the bare idea of writing had never entered her head. She always seemed to me, I fancied, more human than she was, perhaps because her affection was so human. Within the big valves of the door, which were open and broken, we found, instead of the customary hall, a long gallery lit by many side windows. At the first glance, I was reminded of a museum. The tiled
Okay,
floor
so I
was
got
stained
that
with
down.
dust, and a remarkable array of
Her
mysterious
eyebrows
objects
look
was
like
shrouded in the same
me
gray
like a
color.
off brown light.
Then I perceived, standing
I really don't
strange and
know,
gaunt
but
in the
what I'm
center
gonna
of the
do
hall
is I'm just gonna
was
put
clearly
in
the lower part of
brown
a
on her
human skeleton.
eyebrows
I recognized by the
and
elongated feet that it was some extinct
just see how
creature
it go
after
from
the
there.
fashion of the Megatherium. The skull and upper bones lay beside it in the thick dust, and in one
Let me
place,
see what kind
where
of brown do I
rainwater
want
had
to put
dropped through a
on.
leak in the roof, the thing
Maybe a
itself had
dark
been worn
brown.
away.
This is Premier Cup
Further
dark
in the
brown right
gallery
here.
was the huge skeleton
And
barrel
that
of a brontosaurus.
does
My
not suit.
museum hypothesis was confirmed.
I changed it to something
Going
else.
towards the side, I found what appeared to be sloping shelves, and clearing away the thick dust, I found the old familiar glass cases of our own time. But they must have been airtight,
Yeah?
to judge from the fair preservation of some of their contents.
Oh, okay.
Clearly, we stood among the ruins of some latter-day South Kensington. Here, apparently, was the paleontological section.
So I'm gonna get the Premier Cut of Black, and this is why I'm gonna go over her hair with.
Though the inevitable process of decay that had been staved off for a time, and had, through the extinction of bacteria and fungi, lost 99 hundredths of its force, was nevertheless with extreme sureness, if with extreme slowness, at work again upon all its treasures. Here and there I found traces of the little people in the shape of rare fossils broken to pieces, or threaded in strings upon reeds. The cases had in some instances been bodily removed, by the Morlocks as I judged. The place was very silent. The thick dust deadened our footsteps. Weena, who had been holding a sea urchin down the sloping glass of the case, presently came as I stared about me, and very quietly took my hand and stood beside me. And at first, I was so much surprised by this ancient monument of an intellectual age that I gave no thought to the possibilities it presented. Even my preoccupation about the time machine receded a little from my mind. To judge from the size of the place, this palace of green porcelain had a great deal more in it than a gallery of paleontology, possibly historical galleries. It might be even a library. To me, at least in my present circumstances, these would be vastly more interesting than this spectacle of old-time geology in decay. Exploring, I found another short gallery running transversely to the first. This appeared to be devoted to minerals, and the sight of a block of sulfur set my mind running on gunpowder. But I could find no saltpeter. Indeed, no nitrates of any kind. Doubtless, they had deliquesced ages ago. Yet the sulfur hung in my mind, and set up a train of thinking. As for the rest of the contents of that gallery, though on the whole they were the best preserved of all I saw, I had little interest. I had no specialist in mineralogy, and I went on down a very ruinous aisle, running parallel to the first hall I had entered. Apparently, this section had been devoted to natural history, but everything had long since passed out of recognition. A few shriveled and blackened vestiges of what had once been stuffed animals, desiccated mummies in jars that had once held spirit, a brown dust of departed plants, that was all. I was sorry for that, because I should have been glad to trace the pattern readjustments by which the conquest of animated nature had been attained. Then we came to a gallery of simply colossal proportions, but singularly ill-lit, the floor of it running downward at a slight angle from the end at which I entered. At intervals, wide globes hung from the ceiling, many of them cracked and smashed, which suggested that originally the place had been artificially lit. Here I was more in my element, for rising on either side of me were the huge bulks of big machines, all greatly corroded and many broken down, but some still fairly complete. You know, I have a certain weakness for mechanism, and I was inclined to linger among these. The more so, as for the most part, they have the interest of puzzles, and I could make only the vaguest guesses at what they were for. I fancied that if I could solve their puzzles, I should find myself in possession of powers that might be of use against the Morlocks. Suddenly, Lena came very close to my side, so suddenly that she startled me. Had it not been for her, I do not think I should have noticed that the floor of the gallery sloped at all. Footnote: it may be, of course, that the floor did not slope, but that the museum was built into the side of a hill. Editor. The end I had come in at was quite above ground, and was lit by rare, slit-like windows. As you went down the lake, the ground came up against these windows, until at last there was a pit, like the area of a London house before each, and only a narrow line of daylight at the top. I went slowly along, puzzling about the machines, and had been too intent upon them to notice the gradual diminution of the light, until Nina's increasing apprehensions drew my attention. Then I saw that the gallery ran down at last into a thick darkness. I hesitated, and then, as I looked round me, I saw that the dust was less abundant and its surface less even. Further away towards the dimness, it appeared to be broken by a number of small, narrow footprints. My sense of the immediate presence of the Morlocks revived at that. I felt that I was wasting my time in the academic examination of machinery. I called to mind that it was already far advanced in the afternoon, and that I had still no weapon, no refuge, and no means of making a fire. And then, down in the remote blackness
And
of
then
the
shot with my
gallery,
pencil
I heard a
again.
peculiar pattering, and the same odd noises I had heard down the well. I took Wena's hand. Then, struck with a sudden idea, I left her and turned to a machine from which projected a lever not unlike those in a signal box. Clambering up the stand, grasping this lever in my hands, I put all my weight upon it sideways. Suddenly, Wena, deserted in the central aisle, began to whimper. I had judged the strength of the lever pretty correctly, for it snapped after a minute's strain, and I rejoined her with a mace in my hand, more than sufficient, I judged, for any Morlock skull I might encounter. And I longed very much to kill a Morlock or so. Very inhuman, you may think, to want to go killing one's own descendants. But it was impossible
Okay, so I got that
to feel
down.
any humanity in the things. Only my disinclination to leave Wena
I'm gonna get
and
this
the persuasion
Crayola white
that if I began
and
to
go
slake
the
my thirst
eyebrows
for
with
murder,
it.
my time machine might suffer, restrained me
Let
from
me
going
see.
straight down the gallery and killing the brutes I heard. Well, mace in one hand and Wena in the other, I went out of that gallery and into another and still larger one, which at the first
I don't know,
glance
should I change the
reminded me
eyebrow?
of a
Keep
military
I don't
chapel
think I'm
hung with
gonna
tattered
change
flags.
it.
The brown and charred
Oh,
rags that hung from the sides of it I
I'm
presently
gonna change
recognized
it
as the decaying vestiges of books.
with
They had
the
long since dropped to
crazy
pieces,
art
and every
black.
semblance of print had left them. But here and there were warped boards secrets and cracked metallic clasps that told the tale well enough. Had I been a literary man, I might perhaps have moralized upon the futility of all ambition. But as
Now
it
I'm going
was,
to get
the
this
thing that struck me with the
Crayola
keenest
white
force
again
was the enormous
and
waste of
go over
labor to which this somber wilderness of rotting paper testified. At
it.
the
Okay, so
time,
now I'm
I
going to
will
put on her
confess that
little
I
stick.
thought chiefly of the philosophical transactions and my own 17
And then
papers upon
I got the
physical
Premier
objects.
color red. Probably need to shower
Then,
it first
going
though.
up a broad staircase, we came to what may once have been a gallery of technical chemistry. And here I had not a little hope of useful discoveries. Except at one end, where the roof had collapsed, this gallery was well preserved. I went eagerly to every unbroken case, and at last, in one of the really airtight cases, I found a box of matches. Very eagerly I tried them. They were perfectly good. They were not even damp. I turned to Lena. "Dance!" I cried to her in her own tongue. For now I had a weapon indeed against the horrible creatures we feared.
And now,
So, in that derelict museum, upon the thick, soft
what I'm
carpeting
going
of
to do
dust,
is I
to
got color in
Nina's
her
huge
eyes.
delight, I solemnly performed a kind of composite dance, whistling "The Land of the Leal" as cheerfully as I could. In part, it was a modest
I'm going to
cancan,
use the Premier
in
color
part a step
green.
dance, in part a skirt dance, so far as my tailcoat permitted, and in part original, for I am naturally inventive, as you know. Now, I still think that for this box of matches to have escaped the wear of time for immemorial
I'm going
years
to
was
use
most strange. As for me, it was a most
this
fortunate
brown,
Yet, oddly enough, I found a far
my favorite
unlikelier
brown,
substance, and that was camphor.
toffee.
I found it in a sealed jar, that by chance, I suppose, had been really hermetically sealed. I fancied at first that it was paraffin wax, and smashed the glass accordingly. But the odor of camphor was unmistakable.
Get the crazy
In
art
the
white,
universal
go over
decay,
it.
this volatile substance had chanced to survive, perhaps through many thousands of centuries.
She got, let me
It
see, her
reminded me of a
earrings.
sepia painting
She
I had
got
once
white
seen
pearls
done
on
from
here,
a
so we're
fossil
going to put
melon
white on
that
there.
must have perished and become
But it's not
fossilized
coming out
millions of
too
years
white
ago. I was
because
a
I
honey
still
grower,
got some other
but I
paint
remembered
still
that
stuck
it
on
was
this white,
flammable
but it'll
and
do.
burned with a good bright flame, was in
Okay,
fact
so
an excellent
now
candle, and I put it in my pocket.
let's color her
I found no
necklace.
explosives, however, nor any means of breaking down the bronze
And you know what
doors.
else?
As yet, my iron crowbar was the most helpful thing I had chanced upon. Nevertheless, I left that gallery greatly elated.
Just do
Can I
that.
tell you all
You
the
know,
story
not
of that
making
long
real
afternoon?
shoulders, but
It would require a
just
great
enough
effort
to
of
for the
memory to
design
recall
that
my
we are trying to
explorations
do.
in at all the
But
proper
her
order.
necklace,
I
it's
remember
like a little
the long
gold
gallery
piece.
of rusting stands of arms, and how I hesitated between my
But what I'm
crowbar
going to do
and a
is,
hatchet or a sword.
I'm just going to
I
put
could
down the
not carry
Premier
both,
color
however,
yellow.
and my bar of iron promised best against the bronze gates. There were numbers of guns, pistols, and rifles, and most were masses of rust, but many were of some new metal, and still fairly sound. But any cartridges
And
or powder
her
there may
shirt
once
is
have been
pink.
had rotted into dust. One corner I saw was charred and shattered, perhaps, I thought, by an explosion
I'm going
of
to
the
use the
specimens.
Premier color
In another place
pink.
was a vast array of idols: Polynesian, Mexican, Grecian, Phoenician, every country on earth, I should think. And here, yielding to an irresistible impulse, I wrote my name upon the nose of a steam-type monster from South America that particularly took my fancy. As the evening drew on, my interest waned. I went through gallery after gallery, dusty, silent, often ruinous. The exhibits sometimes mere heaps of rust and lignite, sometimes fresher. In one place, I suddenly found myself near the model of a tin mine, and then, by the merest accident, I discovered, in an airtight case, 2 dynamite cartridges. I shouted,
And
"Eureka!"
this is
and
my
smashed the case with joy.
one of my
Then
cartoon
came
pictures
a
of
doubt.
Rihanna.
I hesitated.
And I think it
Selecting a
looks
little
very
side gallery,
pretty.
I made my essay.
Rihanna.
felt such a disappointment as I did waiting
And just because I have a little time, I'm doing another Rihanna picture. It might not come out like this one. Yeah, dog, I'm finna tear that thing up. Let's do this Rihanna picture, like my design of her hair. I love it. I love little bald hairstyles. Little bald hairstyle, I love it. Kind
Towards sunset, I began to consider our position. Night was creeping upon us.
So we're gonna do the same thing on this Rihanna picture. We're gonna put down white first. Okay, white. Be careful you use the white so it won't smudge, okay? Unless you got Tourette's and you just can't help it.
The best thing we could do would be to pass the night in the open, protected by a fire. In the morning, there was the getting of the time machine. Towards that, as yet,
7:50.
my iron pace. But now, with my growing knowledge, I felt very differently towards those bronze doors. Up to this, I had refrained from forcing them, largely because of the mystery on the other side. They had never impressed me as being very strong, and I hoped to find my bar of iron not altogether inadequate for the work. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. We emerged from the palace while the sun was still in part above the horizon. I was determined to reach the White Sphinx early the next morning.
Okay, so I got that down. Now let's get the orange.
That had stopped me on the previous journey. My plan
Try not to go crazy with the orange like I did.
And then building a fire to sleep in the protection of its glare. Accordingly, as we went along, I gathered any sticks or dry grass I saw, and presently had my arms full of such litter. Thus loaded, our progress was slower than I had anticipated, and besides, Weena was tired. And I began to suffer from sleepiness too, so that it was full night before we reached the wood. Upon the shrubby hill of its edge, Weena would have stopped, fearing the darkness before us. But a singular sense of impending calamity, that should indeed have served me as a warning, drove me onward. I had been without sleep for a night and 2 days, and I was feverish and irritable. I felt sleep coming upon me, and the Morlocks with it. While we hesitated, among the black bushes behind us, and dim against their blackness, I saw 3 crouching figures. There was scrub and long grass all about us, and I did not feel safe from their insidious approach. The forest, I calculated, was rather less than a mile across. If we could get through it to the bare hillside, there, as it seemed to me, was an altogether safer resting place. I thought that with my matches and my camphor, I could contrive to keep my path illuminated through the woods. Yet it was evident that if I was to flourish matches with my hands, I should have.
Okay, so we got that down.
So, rather reluctantly.
Okay, so now we need the toasted brown.
I would amaze our friends behind by lighting it. I was to discover the atrocious folly of this proceeding, but it came to my mind as an ingenious move for covering our
Get this
retreat.
toasted brown.
I don't know if you have ever thought what a rare thing the flame must be in the absence of man and in a temperate climate. The sun's heat is rarely strong enough to burn, even when it is focused by dewdrops, as is sometimes the case in more tropical districts. Lightning may blast and blacken, but it rarely gives rise to widespread fire. Decaying vegetation may occasionally smolder with the heat of its fermentation, but this rarely results in flame. In this decadence, too, the art of fire-making had been forgotten on the earth. The red tongues that went licking up my heap of wood were an altogether new and strange thing to Weena. She wanted to run to it and play with it. I believe she would have cast herself into it had I not restrained her. but I caught her up, and in spite of her struggles, plunged boldly before me into the wood. For a little way, the glare of my fire lit the path. Looking back presently, I could see, through the crowded stems, that from my heap of sticks the blaze had spread to some bushes adjacent, and a curved line of fire was creeping up the grass of the hill. I laughed at that, and turned again to the dark trees before me. It was very black, and Weena clung to me convulsively, but there was still, as my eyes grew accustomed to the darkness, sufficient light for me to avoid the stems. Overhead, it was simply black, except where a gap of remote blue sky shone down upon us here and there. I struck none of my matches, because I had no hand for it. Upon my left arm, I carried my little one. In my right hand, I had my iron bar. For some way, I heard nothing but the crackling twigs under my feet, the faint rustle of the breeze above, and my own breathing, and the throb of the blood vessels in my ears. Then I seemed to know of a pattering about me. I pushed on grimly. The pattering
Okay, so I
more
got that
distinct,
down.
and then I
So
thought
what
the
we want to
same
work
weird
on
sound and
is
voices I
the
had heard in
white.
the underworld.
Once again, you
There
gotta put
were
the white in
evidently several of the
certain
Morlocks,
areas
and they were
of
closing in upon
Rihanna.
me. Indeed, in another minute, I felt a tug in my coat,
Certain areas of
something
the
in my
white.
arm, and Weena
Go
shivered
around her
violently
nose.
and became quite still. It was time for a match, but to get one, I must put her down. I did so, and as I fumbled with my pocket, a struggle began in the darkness about my knees, perfectly silent on her part, and with the same peculiar cooing sounds from the Morlocks. Soft little hands, too, were creeping over my coat and back, touching even my neck.
Okay,
Then
so I
the
got
match
that
scratched
down,
and fizzed.
and
I held it flaring and saw the white backs of the Morlocks in flight amid the
she looked like
trees.
she had some
I
little,
hastily took a lump of camphor from my pocket,
a little
prepared to light it
red
as soon as
blush
the
on
match
her.
should wane. Then I
I
looked
got
at
the
Weena.
Premier color
She
red.
was lying clutching my feet and quite motionless, with her face to the ground. With a sudden fright, I stooped to her. She seemed scarcely to breathe. I lit the block of
Okay,
camphor and flung it to the ground, and as it split
and
and flared up and drove back the Morlocks and the shadows, I knelt down and lifted
where's
her.
my
The wood behind seemed
toffee?
full of the stir and
Okay,
murmur of a
toffee.
great company. She seemed to have fainted. I put her carefully upon my shoulder and rose to push on,
Put
and then
toffee right
there
there.
came a horrible realization. In maneuvering with my matches at Weena, I had turned myself about several times, and now I had not the faintest idea in what direction lay my path. For all I knew, I might be facing back towards the palace of green porcelain. I found myself in a cold sweat. I had to think rapidly what to do. I determined to build a fire and encamp where we were. I put Weena, still motionless, down upon a turfy bowl, and very hastily, as my first lump of camphor weighed,
I'm gonna
I
put this
began
brown
collecting
up
sticks
here
and
too,
leaves. Here and
around her
there, out of
eyes.
the darkness round me, the Morlock's eyes shone like carbuncles. The camphor flickered and went out. I lit a match, and as I did so, two white forms that had been approaching Weena dashed hastily away. One was so blinded by the light that he came straight for me, and I felt his bones grind under the blow of my fist.
And I'm gonna get
He
this
gave a
Premier
whoop of
color black
dismay,
and go over
staggered a
her
little
eyes
way,
with
and
it.
fell down. I lit another piece of camphor and went on gathering my bonfire. Presently, I noticed how dry was some of the foliage above me, for since my arrival on the time machine, a matter of a week, no rain had fallen. So, instead of casting about among the trees for fallen twigs, I began leaping up and dragging down branches. Very soon, I had a choking, smoky fire of green wood and
I'm
dry
gonna get this
sticks, and
toasted
could
toffee
economize my
in here.
camphor. Then I turned to where Lena lay beside my iron mace. I tried what I could to revive her, but she lay like one dead. I could not even satisfy myself whether or not she breathed. Now the smoke of the fire beat over towards me, and it must have made me heavy.
So now I'm gonna get this Premier.
The vapor
No,
of camphor
I
was
don't
in
think
the
I
air.
need this.
My fire would not
No,
need
I'm gonna
replenishing
get
for
the
an hour or so.
Crazy Art White. Let me try to blend everything out.
Down. The wood, too, was full of a slumberous murmur that I did not understand. I seemed just to nod and open my eyes, but all was dark, and the Morlocks had their hands upon me.
Before I do that, her eyes.
Fingers, I hastily felt in my pocket for the matchbox, and it had gone.
Okay.
Then they gripped and
so
with me
let's check. Let's go and blend everything out.
What had happened? I had slept, and my fire had gone out, and the bitterness of death came over my soul. The forest seemed full of the smell of burning wood. I was caught by the neck, by the hair, by the arms, and pulled down. It was indescribably horrible in the darkness to feel all those soft creatures heaped upon me. I felt as if I was in a monstrous spider's web. I was overpowered and went down. I felt little teeth nipping at my neck. I rolled over, and as I did so, my hand came against my iron lever. It gave me strength. I struggled up, shaking the human rats from me, and holding the bar short, I thrust where I judged their faces might be. I could feel the succulent giving of flesh and bone under my blows, and for a moment I was free. The strange exultation of the soul
Stay the claw. Well, I said I was going to change that ringtone.
Their voices seemed to rise to a higher pitch of excitement, and their movements grew faster. Yet none came within reach. I stood glaring at the blackness. Then suddenly it came home. What if the Morlocks were afraid? And close on the heels of that came a strange thing. The darkness seemed to grow luminous. Very dim, there began to seem Morlocks about me. 3 batter at my feet, and then I recognized, with incredulous surprise, that the others were running in an incessant stream, as it seemed, from behind me and away through the wood in front. And their backs seemed no longer white, but reddish. As I stood agape, I saw a little red spark go drifting across a gap of starlight between the branches and vanish. And at that, I understood the smell of burning wood, the slumberous murmur that was growing down to a gusty roar, the red glow, and the Morlock's flight.
And I'm going to get this toasted toffee again and go over.
Through the black pillars of the nearer trees, the flames of the burning forest. It was my first fire coming after me. With that, I looked for Rita, but she was gone.
Okay,
the
Crazy Art White.
The explosive thud as each fresh tree burst into flame left little time for reflection. My iron bar still gripped, I followed in the Morlock's path. It was a close race. Once the flames crept forward so swiftly on my right as I ran that I was outflanked and had to strike off to the left. But at last, I emerged upon a small open space. As I did so, the Morlock came blundering towards me and past me and went on straight into the fire. And now I was able to see the most weird and horrible thing, I think, of all that I beheld in that.
I need to sharpen it.
This whole space was as bright as day, with the reflection of the fire. In the center was a hillock or tumulus, surmounted by a scorched hawthorn. Beyond this was another arm of the burning forest, with yellow tongues already writhing from it, completely encircling the space with a fence of fire. Upon the hillside were some 30 or 40 Morlocks, dazzled by the light and heat, and plundering hither and thither against each other in their bewilderment. At first, I did not realize their blindness, and struck furiously at them with my bar, in a frenzy of fear, as they approached me, killing one and crippling several more. But when I had watched the gestures of one of them, groping under the hawthorn against the red sky, and heard their moans, I was assured of their absolute helplessness and misery.
Okay, so I got that out the way. I think I probably do need a little bit more black around here, though. I might could use this toasted toffee. I don't know.
At one time, the flames died down somewhat, and I feared the foul creature creatures
black
would
on top.
presently be able to see me. I was thinking of beginning the fight by killing some of them before this should happen, but the fire burst out again brightly, and I stayed my hand. I walked about the hill among them and avoided them, looking for some trace of Weena, but Weena was gone. At last, I sat down on the summit of the hillock and watched this strange, incredible company of blind things groping
Okay, so now
and making uncanny
I'm gonna
noises
do
to each
her
other
eyes.
as
Once
the glare
again,
of
I'm
the
gonna
fire
put down
compelled them.
the Premier
A boiling
color
uprush of smoke streamed across the
green.
sky, and through the
This
rare tatters of that
is
red
true
canopy,
green.
remote as though they belonged to another universe, shone the little stars. 2 or 3 Morlocks came blundering into me, and I drove
True
them off
green.
with the blows of my fists.
I'm gonna get my toast
As I
dark
did so,
brown.
for the most part of that night,
Dark
I
brown,
was
Premier color
persuaded
dark
it was a
brown.
nightmare.
And
I
put it
bit
on
myself
here.
and screamed in a passionate desire to awake. I beat the ground with my hands and got up and sat down again, and wandered here and there, and again sat down. Then I would fall to rubbing my eyes and calling
Go
upon
over
God
her
to let
eyes
me
again with
awake.
the crazy art
Thrice I
white.
saw Morlocks put their heads down in a kind of agony and rush into the flames. But at last, above the subsiding red of the fire, above the streaming masses of black smoke,
And
whitening and blackening tree stumps,
I'm gonna do the
and the
same thing
diminishing
with her
numbers of these dim
eyebrows.
creatures, came the white light of the day.
The Premier color dark brown.
I searched again for traces of Weena, but there were none. It was plain that they had left her poor little body in the forest. I cannot describe how it relieved me to think that it had escaped the awful fate to which it
And I'm gonna
seemed
get
destined.
the
As I thought of that,
crazy
I was
art
almost
gray
ready to begin a massacre of
and
the
go
helpless
over with the
abominations
gray.
about me, but I contained myself. The hillock, as I have said, was a kind of island in the forest. From its summit, I could now make out through a haze
And
of
I'm gonna get
smoke
the crazy art
palace of
white
green
and go
porcelain.
over it with like
From that,
this.
I could get my bearings for the White Sphinx. And so, leaving the remnant of these damned souls still going hither and thither and moaning,
Okay, so now I'm gonna put down her red lipstick.
and limped on across smoking ashes and among black stems, and still pulsated eternally with fire towards the hiding place of the time machine. I walked slowly, for I was almost exhausted, as well as lame, and I felt the intensest wretchedness for the horrible death of little Weena. It seemed an overwhelming calamity.
And she had on a gold outfit, but I'm just gonna make it yellow and make her earrings yellow too. I'm using the Premier color yellow.
Lonely again, terribly alone. I began to think of this house of mine, of this fireside, of some of you, and with such thoughts came a longing that was pain. But as I walked over the smoking ashes under the bright morning sky, I made a discovery. In my trouser pocket were still some loose matches. The box
Now I just gotta color her hair black
was lost.
with the Premier color
End of
black.
Chapter 9. Chapter 10. About 8 or 9 in the morning, I came to the same seat of yellow metal from which I had viewed the world upon the evening of my arrival. I thought of my hasty conclusions upon that evening, and could not refrain from laughing bitterly at my confidence. Here was the same beautiful scene, the same abundant foliage, the same splendid palaces and magnificent ruins, the same silver river running between its fertile banks. The gay robes of the beautiful people moved hither and thither among the trees. Some were bathing in exactly the place where I had saved Weena, and that suddenly gave me a keen stab of pain. And like blots upon the landscape rose the cupolas above the ways to the underworld. I understood now what all the beauty of the overworld people covered. Very pleasant was their day, as pleasant as the day of the cattle in the field. Like the cattle, they knew of no enemies and provided against no needs, and their end was the same. I grieved to think how brief the dream of the human intellect had been. It had committed suicide. It had set itself steadfastly towards comfort and ease, of balanced society with security and permanency as its watchword. It had attained its hopes and come to this at last. Once, life and property must have reached almost absolute safety. The rich had been assured of his wealth and comfort.
And
The toiler assured of his life and
this
work.
is my cartoon picture of Rihanna.
In that perfect world, there had been no other
I need to
life,
go over the hair
no
again,
social
make it more
question
blacker.
unsolved. And the great quiet and
Make it more blacker, but
it is a law of nature we overlook.
that's it.
That intellectual versatility
That's
is
it.
the compensation for change,
And
danger,
I'm
and
turn it off.
An animal perfectly in harmony with
Rihanna,
its environment is a
the
perfect
girl that is from Barbados.
nature never appeals to intelligence until habit and instinct are
Barbados.
useless. There is no intelligence where there is no